right. I'm glad y'all could make it. You know, summer plans make things a little different and everyone's on the go or coming and going. So it's good to make time to do yoga, whether you can come live or watch the recording. So welcome to those of you on the recording as well. But yeah, I wanted to share today something I noticed. I don't know if you keep track of these things. Of course I do. All of the different recommendations from organizations and teachers on different things you should or should not do with yoga in particular. Usually they do yoga and Pilates. I don't know why they often just earmark yoga and Pilates. These are the poses you should do or not do in these two programs. But and I noticed that they changed it in the National Osteoporosis Foundation. And I wanted to bring it up to you because I think it's a really good discussion. We talk about these things a lot in this class, but it's kind of good to sort of collect them. And then you can all go on, because if people say, oh, you do yoga for osteoporosis? Well, I heard you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. And then you can give very intelligent responses to their questions, right? So the old way of saying it, which used to bug me, was that they would say you can't do forward folds, or they would call it forward bends. And, you know, so there's two ways of putting it, forward fold or forward bends. And I did a class on that last year, and I have a little 5-minute video on the YouTube channel that explains it, because in the picture, well, I'll get to the pictures in a minute, but so she has a forward bending where she's standing and folding over. And the name of the pose in Sanskrit is Uttanasana. So this picture is like this person like this. And, you know, they're tight hamstrings, they can't bend over. And then the other pose that they say not to do forward bending is Pashimotanasana, which is the same shape, only seated down. Right. And then they'll say, don't do Halasana, which is on your shoulders. And by the way, I'm able to do this because I have just osteopenia in my shoulder, and I've been doing these poses for a while. So I'm fine to do them the wrong way, just to show you as an example. The Halasana is the same pose because she has her legs up in the air, and there's just a lot of weight on the shoulders. Right. So these pictures are showing the wrong way to do the pose. So of course, if you're doing it the wrong way, and so to speak, you're going to put the pressure on the upper spine, the vertebral spine, which is where we want to avoid those compression fractures, right? We want to keep our spine nice and long and tall. And so forward folding is actually hinging at the hip. So long spine hinging at the hip. And then depending on your hamstrings, maybe you end up here instead of rounding. Maybe you end up here. Maybe you can lengthen a little further and hinge a little further. Maybe you come down with a long spine here. And that translates to the forward fold. Same thing, long spine, long spine, long spine. Not the rounding. That's fine. It's good for the hips, good for the hamstrings. And same with Halasana. You would come up on top of the shoulders, and my spine is much taller. My toes are on the floor. That's another problematic pose for other reasons, but if you're rounding, that's where they're trying to avoid it, right? So they did switch it to say, let's avoid rounding poses. But the thing is, those poses are not intended to be rounding. Do you get the difference? Okay. So if we're doing them with the hip hinging, the spine is long. And in my teacher training, my teacher sort of pushed this phrasing out of my brain, because she said, don't say straight spine, because the spine has natural curves. Say long spine. And people will say, come up with long straight spine, or fold forward with straight spine. And, you know, and that's a good visual. But it's like thinking of long spine and the curves are natural, right? So they changed it from forward folds, plows, and shoulder stand to rounding poses. And yes, you want to avoid rounding, but those poses aren't intended to be rounded. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay. And then the deep twists, we do twists. We do that pose that they talk about, Matsyendrasana or Pravrita Trikonasana, which we've switched to doing it in a standing position, which is, these twists are sitting down and you're using your knee to turn, or that's the Matsyendrasana, or the triangle pose where you're folding over. This is the one that they don't want you to do, which we do standing now because we're avoiding that hip hinge, because I think a lot of people try to get down with a rounded spine. Does that make sense? So the twisting is good for your spine, good for the vertebra to get stimulus. You just want to do it, not cranking it. You don't want to go too far. You want to start to listen to the lower vertebra, the middle vertebra, and usually the neck can turn a little bit further than the rest of them, just the way that they're stacked and the size of them and their mobility through that. So gentle twists, they can still be deep. They say avoid deep twists. They can still be deep, but it's your sensation, right? You're learning what it feels like within your body. The deep hip stretches, they talk about pigeon pose. We don't do that in this class. I think pigeon pose is just problematic for a lot of people, whether you have low bone density or not. But we will do the lying on your back with your foot in a figure 4 to get that hip stretch. Or we'll do Badakanasana, which is the feet are together and the knees are out. This is the same hip stretch that you would be doing in pigeon pose. Pigeon pose is one leg is out and you're sinking deep into this. The opposite one would be to be on your leg, on your back, and you're doing this external rotation here. So the hip stretch, again, is not, I think what they don't like about pigeon, which I don't like a lot of times because of it just looks awkward in some bodies, is it is a challenge because you have that weight bearing down into the hip this way. You're up above it and the body is coming down on top of it. So if you lie down on your back and do it from the other side, you're metering out the gravity force. You feel the difference, Maureen? I see you trying it there. But for some people, pigeon is totally fine. And that's the other thing, is like they tell you these blanket statements like avoid this at all costs. And some people, yes, should be very, very, very careful. A lot of you have been doing yoga for a long time and you're able to get into these shapes and just be cognizant about what's going on, because your body needs to have the stimulus throughout your whole body. Just listen for, don't ever push past pain. Pain is an informational stopgap, or milestone, or what do I want to say, guidepost, just like come back and find that resistance and work at like 85% right there. So that's where you want to be playing around with that resistance. Where's the body? Where's my mind? Where am I feeling? What's the sensation? It's a really internal practice. And then the one that Sue Lily figured, she emailed me about this. This one really was a question mark on my mind too. Suddenly they've added, out of all these sort of general poses, rounding poses, which don't exist, deep twists, which you can meter out the twist, the deep hip stretches, again, deep is subjective, right? And then all of a sudden they say warrior 1 in their new list. Like you can't do warrior 1. Why? So again, if you've been doing warrior 1 is your hips are square to the end. Your legs are separated. They're separated left to right. You're bending into one knee and the heel is on the floor. And then your arms perhaps are up in the air. It might be at your side. You can do a lot of different things with the arms, right? But warrior 1 in general is this shape. So what's happening is the hip and the ankle are kind of in contention, right? So if you lift your heel off the floor, there's less sensation in the hip. If you drop the heel back to the floor, there's a little bit more sensation, but it's a stretch, like a stretch in the quadricep and the hip flexor. And for the most part, if if you have osteoporosis in your hip sockets or in your femoral bones, this is not necessarily going to cause any issue, although who's to say? Sometimes if people sneeze, they break a rib, right? So it really depends on the fragility of your bones. But that, I think that they're just worried along the lines of pigeon pose as to why that would be. But a lot of people, what I see a lot of people do, this is their warrior one. Their feet aren't that far away versus back here, and separating it out. So if you're up here and you're feeling sensation, again, you go to the point where your sensation is. And then I'm always encouraging you that if the knee is taking the brunt of these joints, the hip and the ankle contending, lift the heel up and it becomes more of a lunge. And you can play with that. Do you see the difference? Yeah. What does it feel like to you? So warrior one is I'm still scratching my head why they called that one out, out of all the poses, what the real issue is. But I think it has to do a lot with that, the front of the hip contending with the ankle. And then, so this is the National Osteoporosis Foundation. I did a search yesterday for osteoporosis sequences. And all these people in the world are giving you poses that these people would say not to do. They're saying do warrior one, they're saying to do, rounding poses, forward folds. They're trying to get you to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling now, but the gist is that we all need to approach yoga from a yoga standpoint. Yoga is understanding ourselves, listening to our body. The teacher is the guide. The last one that they have listed here is overpressure from teachers. Well, we're doing this virtually. I'm never going to be touching you. I'll talk about that in a second, Lauralee. I'm never going to be touching you, but yeah, I agree. Like excessive teacher manipulation on somebody's body is a no-no. That's in general, and not just in classes with low bone density. But yeah, pressure from the teacher is no bueno. That's not good. Lauralee asked a question in the chat. What about Warrior 2? Warrior 2 has a bit more open perspective to it. So your similar shape, only your chest faces this way. The problem with that sometimes is that the front of the pelvis the hip flexors can't open up wide. So the knee kind of drops in. So we want to keep that open. But as far as bone density goes, there's really not too much of an issue. We're trying to strengthen and lengthen things around the hip socket, this is a really healthy pose. This is one that they recommend on the flip side of their handout in particular. But we do this pose all the time, right? We just hinge through the hips here and trying to keep the strength in the upper leg, which is good for balance, good for supporting ourselves in walking and doing other things. That makes sense. What if you feel or hear your spine moving, touching when you twist, especially on floor twists? Yeah. So I have that sometimes too, Kendall. That's a lot more with the soft tissue. So definitely, and the soft tissue and the bones work together, right? So we want to go to that resistance. And if we start hearing the crackle or the clicking or the, back off, wait there, breathe. And then just sort of work in that realm just before that clicking. Sometimes we don't know we've gone past it. It happens to me, like you'll click, 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 and you're like, oops, go back. But that has, in my experience from what my doctors say, it's has something to do with my discs. My discs are not the best. Does that make sense?
Even if it doesn't hurt to do that, and it actually feels good with the twist in the muscles and soft tissues, it probably you shouldn't go that far.
I'm thinking not. But it's almost like cracking your knuckles. You're releasing gas. Those noises really comes from that. in general. You just don't know. Like if it's down in the sacrum, I would not avoid any movement. I would avoid any movement in the sacrum. Yeah. Okay, good. It's up higher. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
But pay attention to it. And a lot of times if we've stabilized the muscles more, we lose less of, we don't have that clicking or the feeling, right? Any other questions? You can unmute if you need to ask questions. If typing is taking too long. Did you want to ask questions, Sue?
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've had a fracture in your hip, and so I have, and I've got screws there,
Mm-hmm.
is that not a good idea to do the pigeon pose? Because I have been doing it in other classes.
Yeah. Is it in the femur or where's your screws? And it's in the pelvis or the femur, the leg or the?
I think it's in the leg.
The leg.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How does it feel for you?
It feels okay, but I'm always very wary, thinking, oh, should I be doing it? And now it's been on that list. I didn't know it was on any list not to do.
I know.
So now I'm more worried.
It's on the list. Yeah. I know. This is why I hate these lists. I really hate these lists. Don't do this. My opinion is if it feels okay, if it doesn't, I think your body ends up telling you like, this doesn't feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, then you shouldn't do it. But if it feels okay and you're feeling strong in it and supported, then I think any pose is viable, right? Yeah. But if it doesn't feel, if you're, do you support your hip with something under it, or is it on the floor or?
It's on the mat.
On the mat. So you have a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I would just be cognizant. What does it feel like for you? What does it? Because like I do pigeon pose too, but I don't have screws in my femur. So and that's the thing. A lot of these poses are you have to modify based on what your history is. Where are the plates and the screws and things like that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question about twist.
Yeah.
I know you touched on twist.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of twisting, I do it very gingerly just because I know intellectually a lot of advisements say don't twist. Although I find that even in daily life, I'm twisting just by living or moving.
Right.
So if I'm doing a yoga pose, usually I'm doing it standing up just because, I think that's the modified version, but I'm just very aware not to twist much. And I don't know if I'm holding back unnecessarily or I'm twisting enough. So I don't know how to gauge.
Yeah, I don't know how to advise you on that. And you're so right. We twist in life, we turn. If you're driving, we need to turn and look. We need to make these movements if we physically can. I mean, some people just have no mobility there, but so I think that's the key is the deep twists. You're going too far and you're ratcheting yourself over and I think the problem here, the picture here they have is someone like this. They have someone where they're sitting down and then they go back like this to make the twist. So now they're curved backward and they're making the twist. So the spine is in an angle. So Lauralee, if you're upright and you're twisting, whether you're seated or standing, the vertebral discs are stacking on top of each other, and that should be a very healthy way of acknowledging that torsion in the vertebra and the soft tissues.
And does it help to like tighten them up to like put a more torque, or not torque, but pressure on them, or does it not matter one way or the other?
You go as far as you're comfortable. Right?
No, I mean like
Mhm.
feeling like you're putting some pressure on the muscle,
Mhm.
almost like tightening the muscle around that area. Is that better to do that or just leave
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Supporting it would be good. Yeah. Supporting. So like drawing the lower belly in and up kind of thing, supporting the base of the spine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Using muscles and bone together is ideal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a T12 compression fracture,
Mm.
and I find yoga in my talking to my physical therapist very beneficial because they're mutually supportive,
Mhm.
and it just gives me a lot of confidence when I kind of I've got two different perspectives on the same thing. So if any of you are going to a physical therapist on a regular basis, I would and you like them, I would suggest asking them some of the same questions to give you some confidence about what you can do and what you shouldn't do.
Yeah. That's great advice, Cal, too, because they're very good at understanding more of the mechanics. Like when Laura Lee talks about tightening, like they'll be able to translate it more into what the muscles are actually able to do. And be looking at you too, hopefully it's doing. And just a reminder, like we do this, and there's many of you on the screen right now. And so I'm trying to pay attention to your little square. And in September, I'll have another rendition of our small group practice. So if you're interested in doing that, there's only 3 people in the room, in the Zoom room. And so you get a little bit more one-on-one attention if you want to do that in September. But you can contact me about that. All right, shall we move? We spent a lot of time talking. I know you're just waiting for it. Okay, let's start standing. You're so patient, but I had to get on my soapbox about that. It's good to reinforce this information. It's good to reinforce the information of why we're moving in such a way, why I kind of avoid even talking about forward folds. We're working on strengthening, like all the poses that they recommend, of course, are about strengthening your muscles, the legs in particular, the back muscles, broadening the collarbones. And then I want to focus, they don't ever talk about the breath. So we're going to come to our mountain pose, standing up tall. The secret pose you can do anywhere. Spreading the toes wide, pushing the feet down and away, lifting up through the ankles, the knees, and see what it feels like if you shift all the way towards your toes. So you're kind of coming off alignment, and then shift back, way back, and you're almost going to fall backwards, and then find that balance point where the ankles are underneath the hips, underneath the shoulders, underneath the ears. Find that alignment. So where your muscles and your bones are structurally holding you up. Turn your gaze down your nose for a moment and broaden the collarbones. Feel weight in the wrists and the fingers, and turn your attention to that breath coming in and out of your nostrils. The secret sauce to yoga is in the breath. Different perspective of where we find our connection to our health through the flow of prana is how they put it in yoga. You can deepen the inhales and deepen the exhales, and be very aware of that pause between the inhales and the exhales. And then raise your gaze up, be aware of your place in the room. Next inhale, reach the hands out and up, push the air up, move the gaze and the arms overhead, pause. Exhale, flip the palms out and down, coming back down to your mountain pose, just turning back to that straight. Nice. Inhale, flip the palms out and up, pushing the air up. And exhaling out and down. One more time. Inhale, reaching out and up. And exhaling out and down. And then coming into chair pose, you can either bring toes and ankles together, bring a block to your thighs, or just holding that sensation between your legs, and then sink back into chair pose. Knees fall over toes, hips come back over heels. So you're keeping the spine still nice and long, right? But you're hinging at the hips. Press from the feet up through the pinky fingers as you hold that imaginary block, lengthening the spine. And always, if the hands overhead don't feel good, you can always bring the hands to the waist or kind of make a modification that works for you as you find that range of motion in your joints that works. Maybe it's lower, but you're always reaching through the pinkies. And then inhale, straighten the legs, reach to the ceiling, and exhale, hands come back down. Do this a couple of times. This is probably one of the best poses. You sink into chair pose, maybe a little deeper. The more we have that sense of hinging at the hips, bending the knees, and the ankles are part of this hinge. Notice that the shins come over the top of the feet. Notice if you've shifted back to the heels or way forward onto the toes, feel balance through the toes and the heels. And then inhale, straighten the legs, reach to the ceiling. Exhale, hands down. One more time like that, warming up these big muscles in the body, the largest muscles in the body through the legs. See if you can connect again through the base of the pelvis, the sit bones drawing toward one another, pubic bone and tailbone drawing toward one another. Nice. Making any adjustments to the arms. And then straighten your legs. Inhale, reach to the ceiling, and exhale, hands come back down. Nice. Hands to your waist. And shift your weight over to your right leg. Bend your left knee forward. Externally rotate. Bring the heel above the ankle. You can play here with your tree pose or bring your foot to the calf. Maybe you make a move over to a support system. Or maybe bring the foot all the way up into the inner thigh. Once you feel balance, maybe the hands come to the heart. Maybe the hands overhead or any version. Hugging the muscles into the bones. So really strengthening that leg. Keeping the spine long and vertical, evenly stacked. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, the hands come back to the waist. Inhale, bring the knee forward, and exhale, return the foot to the floor. Nice. Shift over to the other leg. Find the balance there, then bend the knee, externally rotate the hip, and then either connect the heel to above the ankle and just bring the toes off the floor, or maybe the foot to the inner thigh, or all the way up into the inner calf, the inner thigh. Find the balance. The more we move in these poses, we're just practicing listening to our feet essentially in this pose. All the little wiggles that we're feeling in that foot, the body has to react. Nice, Susan. And then you're dancing. Yep. Find what works for you. And then we fall out of it, but we fall out gracefully, right? Take one more inhale here. Exhale, hands back to the waist. Inhale, the knee come forward. Exhale, foot down. Nice. Okay, separate the feet out midway. So they're underneath your elbows with your hands out. Right. Let's turn the right toes right towards the right and left toes in. I'm going to do my right and left as well. So you may be going in the opposite direction from me. Or it looks like the opposite direction, but we're both doing our right. Keep the chest facing the same side. And see if you can feel the feet as if you did with mountain pose. So you're pressing the feet evenly, coming up into the upper thighs. Arms are out to a T. Take a big inhale here. And then tip over the right hip and follow this forward fold, right? It's a hip hinge. The left hand can wait on the waist. And don't go any further with the spine rounding. Again, this is a side round. They don't say that triangle pose is an issue, but I find a lot of people will round their spine to go down. We don't want to do that. We want to hinge at the hip. So you're finding whatever works for you. Sometimes you can go further. Like I have pretty deep fold here, but not everybody can do that. And then maybe the arm reaches to the sky. That's just an accoutrement to the pose. Maybe the gaze turns up. That kind of challenges the balance a bit, but it's all optional. Really, we're working into the hips with this pose. So the hand on the waist, the gaze forward or down, those are all options. Breathing. And then pushing through the feet, strong legs, bring the torso right back up where it was, arms wide. Pivot the feet over to the other side, getting ready for the other side. You know, there's some prescriptions on where the feet are. Mostly the front leg is externally rotating from your pelvis. Your pelvis is facing the side. So that's externally rotating and the foot should be parallel to the end of the sides of the mat. Arms are up to a T. The other hip is rotating in a bit. And so depending on where it feels right for you, again, this is an ankle, knee, and hip thing, just like in Warrior One. So you find what works for you. Take an inhale here, and then exhale, hinging over that left hip. Right hand comes to the waist as you find that hip hinge that works for you. Keeping the spine long, no rounding. Nice. Keep the spine long, pushing the feet away. And then keep almost thinking like that right hip is hinging out away from you. Yeah. And the left hip is hinging underneath your body. Nice. And then pushing through the feet. Inhale, coming up, arms wide. Pivot the feet forward to center. And then, so the feet are parallel, we're going to separate them out a little further. This is where we're coming into our Warrior Two. I was realizing we rarely do Warrior One in the class, but we can change that. Okay, turning the right toes toward the right, left toes in, bending into that right knee. We'll do Warrior Two here. And arms out to a T. So the knee is tracking over the second toe, right? And if your knee is over your ankle, past your ankle, you want to separate your feet a little further. So look down and see if you can see your right toes. If you can't, then maybe you need to separate the feet a little further. And the hands out to a T is just optional. If it's too much on the shoulders, the hands can come to the waist. And then notice if you've shifted over that right hip or if you've shifted back, and see if you can come up into a center position. Nice, Cal, that's better. Yep. Breathing here. Your gaze is over your right fingertips, just so you know. That's the prescribed. So the cervical spine comes into it a bit. Take one more inhale here, and then exhale. Your left hand comes to your waist. Hinge over that right hip, long spine. Again, it's a hinge. And then either forearm crosses the thigh or hand to the thigh, right? Just so the spine stays long on either side. Or maybe the hand comes down to the floor, depending on where you're going. And then reach the left hand up and over at an angle. So the whole left side of your body is an angle. Press down to the left heel, reach up to the left pinky finger, rolling the left pinky finger down and palm facing towards the back, thumb up. So you're spiraling that shoulder away from your ear. Find the breath. Building strength in the bones, in the muscles. Doing the proper alignment through the spine. That's the most vulnerable spot, I think, is the spine. It has less muscles to support it. And then inhale, coming up through Warrior Two, straightening the right leg. Turn the toes toward the center, hands to the waist, and make your way towards the other side. So left toes towards the left, right toes in. Bending into the left knee for Warrior Two, second side. Check the knee, knee over the ankle. Check where your pelvis is. Are you forward or back? Maybe the arms come up. Maybe you turn your gaze over your left fingertips. So the chest faces to the side, a bit of a twist in the neck. Soften the shoulders. Let those shoulder blades come down the spine. Breathing. Deep inhales, deep exhales. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, right hand to the waist, hinge over that left hip. Forearm crosses thigh or hand to the thigh, keeping the spine long. Maybe right arm reaches at an angle. Push back to that right heel. Reach up to the right pinky finger. Breathing here. And then inhale, coming up through warrior two, straightening the left leg, turn towards the side, hands to your waist. And then heel toe the feet closer together a bit. We're going to turn towards the right and then separate the feet left to right. So when you're facing the end of the mat, you're not on a balance beam. Feet are not one behind the other, but you're left to right. You're facing the end of the mat. And then we're going to have our hands on our waist. Separate the feet a little bit further apart, bending into that right knee. Let's try warrior one. What does it feel like for you? So you're bending into that right knee, back heel is grounded. If you feel the contention between the hip and the ankle and the knee, lift the back heel off the floor for high lunge legs. So back heel is off the floor. It's a little more balance driven. Maybe the hands come overhead for the arms in the warrior one. With the heel off the floor, it's called high crescent. But if they feel unstable, I would drop the heel to the center because then the foot is flat on the floor. Nice. Take one more inhale here. Then exhale, bring the hands to the waist. Lift the heel off the floor if you haven't already. And then we're going to shift into the right foot. So come forward with the chest. And then maybe lift the left foot off the floor. Maybe hinge forward. Maybe release the hands. It's a balance pose. Maybe if something's in front of you, you would hold on to that. Yep. Think of the inner thigh lifting up. And then exhale, bend the standing knee, step way back again. And then let's switch legs like this. So step the left foot forward, right foot back. Coming into warrior one here. Nice. Now the back heel is down. Now, what does it feel like for you? Does it feel better with the back heel off? Because then you're bringing in more of a challenge with the balance, which is fine. What does it feel better if the back heel is down? Does it feel better for you to shift the hip off to the side a bit and the chest is forward? Maybe the hands come up for warrior one, holding that imaginary block. Push back through the back heel. So a lot of these poses are, like Sue brought up, you're doing these poses in other classes. The teacher may or may not be aware of what the National Osteoporosis Foundation said. Now, what does it feel like for you though? Like with any class that I teach, whether it's for bone health or not, I want the student to listen to their own body. Take one more inhale here. And then exhale, hands to the waist. I like that, Kendall. Nice arms. And then shifting the chest forward. Make all the weight come into the left leg. Find the balance first with the back foot on the floor. The heel is off the floor. Then straighten the left leg, lift up to the right inner thigh. Maybe the hands stay on the waist. Maybe you release the hands behind you or forward, lifting up to the inner thigh. It's a challenging pose. Nice. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, bend the standing knee, step way back, that right foot. Hands come up to Warrior one, straighten the left leg, step forward with your right and pause in your mountain pose. Nice. Yeah. Okay, then separate your feet out to the edges of your mat, toes out, heels slightly in. You're gonna press the feet down and away. Inhale, swing the arms up. Exhale, bend the knees over the toes, push through the feet. Inhale, coming up. Exhale, down, keep the spine long. Inhaling up, we're hinging at the hips. Exhale, down. One more time, up. And then exhale down to your squat, either hands on the thighs, forearms on thighs, elbows in knees. Adjust the feet, make the knees happy. Find balance with the feet. If you can keep the chest lifted. So you're hinging more at the hips. Now, if this is not appropriate, you come up out of it. Breathing here. Find buoyancy in the legs. So at any moment we could stand up. So this is a strengthening pose, sort of stretching and strengthening at the same time. Nice. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, we're going to come to the floor onto our hands and knees. Bring our hands and knees. Nice. Nice. And then keeping the palms underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. Let's step the left foot back behind you and press into the ball of the foot, reaching through the heel. Keep that left hand there. Right hand comes forward, palm facing center. Lift the belly to the spine and push the left foot off the floor to hip height. Long spine, finding the core. Lifting through the toes, through the fingers. Balance on the right toes and the left fingers. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, bring the hand and knee back down to the floor. Second side, right foot steps back, press into the ball of the foot. Reach through the heel, lengthen the calf, take your left hand forward, palm faces center, so the shoulders rolling away from the ears. Lift the belly to the spine to secure the core and push the right foot off the floor to hip height. Reach through those toes and fingers. Balance on the opposite hand and foot. Breathing deeply. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, hand and foot come back down, or knee come down. Nice. And then come back to your plank pose. So either one leg or two legs go back. Lifting up to the belly. If you're in the Strong Bones Challenge Facebook group, it's plank pose is the challenge of the month. Lengthen through the spine. You're doing one leg at a time. Just switch one leg and after a couple breaths. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, bend both knees to the floor. Lower the torso all the way down to the floor. Keeping the hands underneath the shoulders or a little bit further back along the ribs, drawing the elbows back. Draw the toes together. And then lifting just the nape of the neck, the chest. Draw the elbows back. Maybe make the hands light so you're using the strength of those muscles in the back. One of the most important poses we can do for our spine. Baby Cobra. So, Maureen, draw your hands back and elbows off the floor. Yeah, there you go. Take one more inhale here. Then exhale, lower your chin and chest to the floor. Release your hands alongside your body. Palms facing up. Chin is neutral. And then lift the soles of the feet off the floor. Lift the nape of the neck off the floor. Maybe the hands come off the floor, reaching behind you. You're using the strength of the feet, strength of the back of the legs, strength of the back itself, the muscles around the spine, broadening the collarbones, lifting the chest forward, breathing deeply. One more inhale here. Exhale, lower the chest, the arms, the legs. And then we'll take our rolling over. So we're going to reach right arm to the front of you and then roll over on your back. That's the other thing. There are some transitions that are more important for making these movements depending on, again, the fragility of your spine. It's always best to err on the side of caution. So moving with awareness. And then once you're on your back, I want you to line up like you're in mountain pose. So your legs are straight, heels are flexed, your toes are reaching to the ceiling. Adjusting your hips and your shoulders. So your shoulder blades are flat on the floor. Your arms are alongside your body. It's like you've walked up and backed up against a wall. Feel the sensation of the back of the skull on the floor, back of the head, back of the neck, or not the neck, sorry, back of the shoulders. And then whatever parts of your body are touching the floor. Reaching through the heels. And then keep the left heel reaching away from you and draw the right knee up and hold on to the kneecap with both hands. And then drawing the knee closer to the chest as you reach through that left heel. Working in the hip. So mobility, we're strengthening the muscles. We're also finding more awareness and mobility in these joint spaces. And then releasing the left hand down either to the floor or your hip socket, holding on to that right knee. Rotate the right hip out to the right. So the knee keeps coming towards your body as you rotate that hip around in the socket over to the right, keeping the left hip rooted on the ground, making more space in that hip socket. And then inhale, rotate that hip back in the socket, back to the center. Release the hands, straighten the right leg down to meet the left, and just pause there for a moment. Taking these pauses in between poses, let your body sort of absorb what was happening. And keeping the right leg straight, left knee draws up, holding onto the kneecap with both hands, drawing it up close to your body, straight, lengthening through the psoas or that area. Reaching through that right heel. You can point or flex the left toes, whatever feels most active. And then keeping hold of the left knee with your left hand, right hand either comes out to the side or the right hand comes to your hip point, and rotate that left hip out to the side. Keep rooted through the left side of your hip. And then slowly rotate, inhaling back to the center. Release the knee, let the foot come back down to the floor. And then bending both knees, place the feet out to the edges of the mat. Rotate the arms out to the side. And we're going to do our windshield wipers. You're going to exhale the knees over to one side and gaze in the opposite direction. This is a really gentle twist in the spine, actually. And inhale, bringing the knees up, gaze to the ceiling. Exhale, let the knees go over, dropping the gaze the opposite direction. So the wider the feet, the more space you have for the hips to move. Making any adjustments based on what's going on with your range of motion. I know there's some things with fusions and things between bones. You need to make that adjustment for yourself. Rocking, using this moment as you're rocking from side to side on the back of your sacrum and the back of your skull to notice the connection from the bottoms of your feet up into your ankles, your knees, your hips, and then gently into the spine. So we're just gently rocking through the low back, the mid back, the upper back to some extent, and a lot through the cervical spine as we look to side to side. Notice the reverberations that roll out through the shoulders into the elbows, out to the wrists and fingers. Next time you're on the left-hand side, you're going to pause there with the knees over to the left. Push a little bit through that right heel, and then maybe take the left ankle on top of the right thigh and gaze to the ceiling. So the internally rotating that right hip a bit more. If this doesn't feel right, obviously don't do the extra weight with the heel. Make any other adjustments that might feel better for you. See if you can release into the shape in a comfortable way that you've chosen. And then releasing that left foot down to the floor. If it's on your thigh, inhale, bringing the knees up. Exhale, rotate the knees over to the other side. Once you're there, you push a little bit through the left heel and then maybe take the right ankle on top of the left thigh. So the other way, Cal, drop your knees over to the right. Keep both knees bent, drop your knees over to the right, and put your right ankle on top of your left thigh. There you go, if that's okay. If the right ankle on the thigh is an option. Okay. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, take the right foot down to the floor if it's on your thigh. Inhale, bring both knees up. And exhale, straighten both legs out wide, arms go wide, adjusting your hips and your shoulders. So now you've flattened onto the surface beneath you and you're taking all the weight into the floor. Feel the presence of the space all around you. This feels like the right position for your Shavasana. You're welcome to stay right here. Otherwise, make any adjustments, doing anything you need to be comfortable. Release all the efforts in your body. Release the tongue from the roof of the mouth, release your jaw, release your neck. Release down through your shoulders, through each of your elbows, your wrists, and all your fingers. Let your breath float away as you release down your spine, through your hips, through each of your knees, your ankles, and all your toes. Just take these last few moments of class in stillness, absorbing all the benefits of today's practice. Begin to deepen your breath. And spread your fingers and toes. And draw your legs together, arms overhead for a nice long stretch. And then bending one knee at a time, roll over to one side and pause there for a moment. And use your hands and arms and gently make your way up to a seated position. And thank you so much for sharing your practice, your energy, and your breath. May your hearts be filled with loving kindness. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be healthy and well nourished. And may you be happy. Namaste. Thanks for coming. I'm going to turn the recording off. I'm happy to stay on, answer questions or chat.